Trump repeats call for former Mesa County Clerk Tina Peters to be released from prison. In a Thursday morning social media post, President Donald Trump once again demanded Colorado release incarcerated former Mesa County Clerk Tina Peters, quote, right now, end quote. Trump called Peters a brave and innocent patriot who has been tortured by crooked Colorado politicians, including the big mail-in ballot supporting the governor of the state. Last August, Peters was found guilty by a jury of her peers of 4 felonies, including 3 counts of attempting to influence a public servant and 1 count of conspiracy to commit criminal impersonation. She was also convicted of misdemeanors, including misconduct and violation of duty. She was sentenced to 9 years in jail and state prison and has been in the process of appealing her sentence. Peters helped a man gain unauthorized access to voting equipment. The county's voting machines, passwords, and copies of its hard drives were subsequently posted online by people seeking to undermine faith in the state's election system. Trump wrote Peters did nothing wrong except catching the Democrats cheat in the election. She is an old woman and very sick. If she is not released, I am going to take harsh measures. It's just insanely ironic, right? That the exact same people that lie and claim that there was election fraud and that this is this huge problem has one of their own supporters literally going out and trying to do election fraud type like nonsense behind the scenes, right? The exact kind of like boogeyman scapegoat that you've been pretending exists for the last year, or really the last 4 years since you pretended the 2020 election was stolen. And then, but because she's on your side, conveniently you want to pardon her and she's done nothing wrong, and actually she's a freedom fighter. Like, bro, it is like so transparently partisan and unprincipled, right? It is so obviously clear that they are not actually coming from the perspective of we really think that the election was stolen and blah, 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 all that stuff, right? It is so obviously from the cynical perspective of we're just power grabbing, right? And that she's one of these idiots that's willing to basically, she has fallen hook, line, and sinker for this nonsense and is willing to martyr herself for our cause. This is great. We want as many people like that as possible. It's just insanely ironic, the idea that this kind of person, the exact kind of person that if it was a Democrat, if she was a registered lefty in any kind of way, shape, or form, they would be losing their minds. And this would be the peak, this would be the crux piece of evidence that they would present as the argument that like Democrats are trying to steal the election and really there's so much election integrity problems and blah, blah, blah. This would be the like quintessential piece of evidence that they would bring up if the shoe is on the other foot. But because the shoe isn't on the other foot, all of their principles go completely out the window, and it's just, oh yeah, she supports us, she's doing it for us. I just don't understand the people that fall for this hook, line, and sinker, right? I just think it has to be a product of like the type of media they're consuming and the lack of like comprehensive media they're consuming, right? They just aren't they just aren't being presented the full picture. And if you aren't being presented the full picture, how can you possibly be expected to form a proper like viewpoint on it, right? It is totally reasonable that if you were being given a very narrow slice of the view that like, well, if that's all you know, then you might come to the incorrect conclusion. Peters did not show any evidence of tampering or cheating in Colorado's election system during her trial or in the months before it. The local district attorney investigated a claim that the hard drives showed evidence of vote tampering and concluded that the anomalies were instead created by a staff member trying to troubleshoot a computer issue. Peters was tried on state charges, and Trump has no ability to pardon her, like he did with January 6 defendants. But Trump could try to pressure the state by other means, including withholding federal funding, as he's done with universities. Trump has tried to help Peters before. In May, he directed his Department of Justice via social media to take all necessary action to help secure the release of former Mesa County Clerk Tina Peters. Even before that post, the Justice Department filed motions supporting her federal habeas request. Earlier this week, Trump also said he planned to lead a movement to get rid of all mail-in ballots and voting machines. Trump inaccurately said the U.S. was the only country in the world to use mail-in voting. He said he'd sign an executive order to stop states from using mail-in ballots and voting machines. Also, this goes without saying, okay, and I'm sure you all know this, but like the real reason why he wants to get rid of mail-in ballots and voting machines is not because there is any evidence in support of there being fraud through those mediums of voting. There's zero evidence, and we've litigated this in like dozens and dozens of court cases, right? The real reason he wants this is because doing so would favor him and the Republicans electorally moving forward, right? It's just a fact that more Democrat-leaning people end up voting in these mail-in ballots than their Republican counterparts, right? So if they can completely eliminate all mail-in ballots, then they're going to receive an electoral boost by virtue of a lot of those Democrats that would have voted mail-in ballot-wise not going to vote in person. Basically, it helps the Republicans almost exclusively to get rid of mail-in ballots. And obviously, it should not be a shock to anyone. Obviously, this administration does not care about the principle or the concept of disenfranchising voters, right? That is not something that's even on their radar whatsoever. More than a decade ago, Colorado passed the Voter Access and Modernized Elections Act, which requires ballots to be mailed to all registered voters. The state also continues to offer county-based in-person voting, although only a fraction of voters have chosen to cast their ballots that way in recent years. Which kind of makes sense, right? When everything today is sort of like so atomized and everything's online and, you know, you got your phone, you can do everything from that. It does seem a little bit antiquated for everybody to have to go in and physically vote. And it feels especially antiquated for it to have to be on a physical piece of paper that everybody has to count up one by one, right? It's just unnecessarily antiquated. So it makes sense to me that you would have a robust mail-in voting system and that you would provide these mail-in ballots to everybody, right? It seems like a double whammy, right? Not only do you get more people voting by just you don't even have to go to a voting place. You just get it mailed right to you. All you have to do is fill it out and put it right back in the mailbox. So theoretically, you're going to get way more people voting as a result of that. But also, it shores up the practical necessity for the actual physical voting locations, right? If you go from 100% of your population voting in person to 50% of your population voting in person and 50% of it doing through mail-in voting ballots, theoretically, you then only have to have 50% of the physical voting locations and staffing personnel and all the logistics that go in behind it. So I would think, from like a economic efficiency, government efficiency standpoint, it actually also makes sense to have a robust mail-in voting system that isn't exclusionary towards, people who don't have medical conditions, right? Because there's a lot of states like Texas that do have mail-in ballot voting, but I'm pretty sure they have a rule that's like you need to be like sick or out of state, or you need to have, there are certain qualifications, and not anybody and everybody is eligible to mail in to vote by mail. But it makes sense that, to me, assuming that you have the security concerns figured out, which there's no evidence that any place hasn't figured out the security concerns, that you should just do it, that you should just have a robust mail-in voting system. And even more so, you should be encouraging people to use it in favor of physical voting locations. We appreciate the president's awareness and recognition of Colorado's wildly popular ability to vote by mail, which is safe, secure, and has led to record turnout for Coloradans of every party, said Shelby Weeman, a spokesperson for Governor Jared Polis. See, okay, so even though, which is safe and has led to a record number of turnout for Coloradans of every party, see, like, yeah, maybe, and so like I said, yeah, it does increase the likelihood of people going out to vote because you have lowered the barrier of entry, the practical barriers of entry of having to vote. And even though you see this increase across the board, regardless of party, and therefore it should ubiquitously be a good thing that we're all in favor of, it still positively impacts the Democrats more than the Republicans. And from that narrow electoral, metagame perspective, that is why they want to eliminate the ability to do mail-in ballot voting. So yeah, this sort of just like goes along with the whole Ashley Babbitt, and there was some other old lady who like stole money from a slain police officer's memorial fund or whatever, and got convicted of it. But because she was literally called like Mrs. Trump or whatever, because she was like a pure Trump sycophant martyr, that he literally pardoned her, or like she got off scot-free or whatever, right? This is just continuing in the conga line, and this very clear message that this Trump administration is sending, that if you martyr yourself for us, if you are sycophantic towards us, we will, if you scratch our back, we'll scratch yours, right? Principles be damned. Governance and representing the people in constituencies be damned, right? You sycophant for us, you martyr for us, you rep us, you scratch our back, we will scratch your back, all right? That is the very clear message that they are sending to all of their supporters, right? Because they want more of this moving forward, right? Obviously, outwardly, they're going to pretend like they don't want this sort of thing and that they're principled, but really behind the scenes, right, these are maximally cynical people, and they are more than willing to let you martyr yourself for their own cynical cause. They love that. They're not only more than willing to do that, they love that because they don't have to do anything, right? You are doing all the work for them. All they had to do was trick your dumb ass into doing it.